Hello and welcome to Bible Smack! Alright, so today I've been kind of watching some videos and keeping up with some of the latest stuff. And there's a story that's very interesting to me. It was basically Corey Feldman has been coming out and telling people that he's been molested as a child, and that child molestation was a common practice in Hollywood. And basically, he recently decided to start naming names, and he said that his friend, is often co-star Corey Haim, was molested or sodomized by none other than Charlie Sheen in the movie. I think it was Luca. Could have been Lucas. I think it was Luca. Now, I know it's like 2017, so I want people to kind of understand some things. Back in the late 80s, you had Corey Feldman and Corey Haim come out in a movie. It's called License to Drive. And this movie was essentially, if you were a young kid, these were the coolest kids in the country. Corey and Corey. You know, you'd have a lot of the teen pop magazines and all that kind of stuff, and they were all over it. And essentially, you know, the image of what you wanted to be, if you wanted to be popular, if you wanted to be cool, you know, this was all part of this theme. And with these two, as teenagers, I remember involved stealing a car and getting with a girl, all this kind of stuff. But basically, it was the teenage fantasy movie. You know, I guess the genre would start with Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but you know, it was the quintessential 80s. You know, you're cool, all that kind of stuff. All the kids, you know, wanted to, you know, look like, you know, one of these Coreys, and all, like, either the guys wanted to look like them or the girls wanted to, you know, go out with them. Okay, so this is essential to understanding this, what's happened to our culture. Because, you know, these guys, you know, obviously they got, you know, messed with and stuff like that. And then later there's issues of homosexuality. Now, Corey Feldman, I think, would be classified as bisexual, maybe even just straight, who got molested, you know, of course, obviously, you know, in a gay way, but you know, he does have relationships with women. So, you know, Corey Haim became sexually confused. Now, this is Feldman's version of the story, where he says that Haim was, you know, told that the homosexual thing was something that, you know, men in Hollywood do. And of course, now, you know, we kind of break this down a little bit, and, you know, drama itself has been known to attract homosexuals. It doesn't have to, but it just seems to. I think that, you know, homosexuals are typically people with identity issues. You know, they really don't understand, you know, this is talk about male homosexuality, but, you know, female homosexuality has a little bit of it too. They don't understand their role in, you know, as a man, or their identity and stuff like that. So, you know, basically, acting is about erasing your identity and taking on a totally different identity. That's the whole skill. So I think that homosexuals are attracted to drama. They're attracted to that idea of being whatever you want to be. One of the earliest pro-homosexual movies was the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And one of the themes behind that was don't see it, be it. And then at the end of the movie, there's this like connection between man and God, and it's the transvestite. What was that guy's name? Tim something. But basically, the symbolism was that this homosexual movement was some way supposed to be, a spiritual evolutionary process of you becoming the better person to transcend sexual roles. But going back to that, so it's not really the biggest shocker in the world that there is some homosexuality going on in Hollywood. But also, I think there's a lot more deeper stuff that goes on. So, two major stars that just got, caught as far as this goes. I mean, at first you had all these stories that are building up to it with the regular sexual harassment, the abuse and mistreatment of women. But then, they had Kevin Spacey exposed, I think 2 stories of him, basically molesting teenage boys. And his response was, okay, I admit it, I'm coming out of the closet as gay. That's what he said. So when he says that, it's, it really blurs the line because they are accusing him of, pedophilia. And here he is kind of saying it in a way to where pedophilia is blended into his homosexuality, and therefore his homosexuality is acceptable. And this is the problem. That homosexuality and pedophilia are interwoven. You can be a homosexual and never be a pedophile. But pedophilia runs its way with homosexuality. And I had studied that early when I was writing an article dealing with homosexuality and what the Bible says about it, and also how it's developed as a movement. What's unique as far as the movement of sodomy and stuff like that is that in the ancients, there were men who did perform homosexual acts, but they really didn't misunderstand their identity. They were just doing an activity because they were away from their women. So basically, here there is an identity issue that is now introduced into the whole process. But when we're dealing with that, some of the earliest homosexual activists, which were very active in the journalism community, but some of the early homosexual activists were also saying that we need to erase age barriers on sex and supporting pedophilia. And so here Kevin Spacey is, and he's bringing that blurring line up. Should my pedophilia be disqualified when that's an integral part of my homosexuality that's supposed to be acceptable now? Nevertheless, he was canceled from his series, the House of Cards, and which, I ain't gonna worry about that. But anyway, he was canceled from his series, and so there are still lines left to be drawn, but this is where this is coming back. And of course, there was a group of homosexual pedophiles that was making momentum in Canada called NAMBLA, North American Man-Boy Love Association. So you see this combination again, kind of coming back into that. But, I think a lot of people are shocked that Charlie Sheen was brought up into all this. Charlie Sheen is known for being with women. He consorts with prostitutes, porn stars, and whatever he can find. And, all of a sudden it's not just women anymore. Apparently he was also with men, or at least boys. In the account, it said that Haim had, basically been sodomized by it, that Charlie pushed himself onto him, and then after Charlie was done, Haim was confused, thought that they could have a relationship. Charlie Sheen, didn't want anything to do with him. Years later, there was a claim they had a relationship again, and that he had no respect for Charlie after that. But essentially, there's all this, sexual confusion going on there. And that happens when someone who is, young and barely, of some sort of adultness, is being exposed to sex. They haven't established their identity psychologically. And since they've not psychologically established their identity, then it is up for grabs when it comes to sex, because sex warps your psyche. Okay? Sex is not just a physical thing. It affects your soul. So basically, where is this coming from? Well, the key is not simply... I'm not pointing this out as this is the only thing and this is the ultimate source, but I'm saying is that there's a connection here. And the connection is Charlie Sheen. What I mean is that, now, other things have also, because, this is hearsay, but other things have also established that this is pretty well, probable. One is the fact that Charlie Sheen is admitted to be HIV positive, which is originally, the connections of homosexuality, AIDS. I'll put it to you like this. Originally, it was called the GRID instead of AIDS. It was called gay-related immune deficiency. When they first started spotting the disease, it was 100% gay males. Okay, so basically, there's a huge connection there, but don't get me wrong. There's many ways to contract HIV without necessarily being gay. But if you had contact with a person doing this, like in other words, there are bisexual men who might do that, and they give it to their women afterwards. Okay, or intravenous drug use, where they're switching needles and stuff like that. There's a lot of other, ways that this is acquired, and so, I'm not trying to push a stereotype, but this is just one piece of a puzzle. The other piece is his ex-wife, Denise Richards. Because Denise Richards claimed in divorce court that Charlie had been caught several times with gay pornography. So, apparently there is that kind of thing there. So basically, you have that going on, but where's this connection? Well, what this is that where does Charlie come from? His father is a guy named Martin Sheen. Martin Sheen is a very much devout Catholic. So much to the point where, Martin's real name was Estevez, so his other son's name Emilio Estevez. But Martin is got this name Estevez. He changed it to Martin Sheen, and Sheen is the title of Fulton J. Sheen, the first big Roman Catholic priest / televangelist. And so there was a mission with Martin Sheen, and that was Catholicism impacting entertainment. And not just Catholicism, but a leftist socialist version of Catholicism. He also was very active in the Catholic workers movement. So Martin Sheen was a very powerful player. His son, kind of is, not quite as well known for intellectual exploits, but he's raised under that Catholic system. And the reason I bring that up is because Roman Catholicism has had a huge influence on entertainment. Early Hollywood used to have a lot of things playing the roles of the priest. And they would play the roles of Roman Catholic priests in a very positive manner. There was a very negative attitude that America had towards Catholics and the priesthood, and there is a deeper reason, which I'll get to in a couple minutes. But essentially, they pushed the Roman Catholic religion through Hollywood. Okay. And so, you have that influence, and of course you had this huge movement, the scandal that went on with the Roman Catholic priesthood. 5,000, over the period of 50 years, 5,000 Roman Catholic priests were caught in incidences molesting 100,000 children. Okay. Now, this also, you have to understand, does not include those kids becoming homosexual and then, having sex with others or molesting others. I know of 2 incidents, one of a victim and one of somebody who just observed it. But basically, in the Roman Catholic orphanages, there would be rampant homosexuality. So a kid would be bullied in this environment, like a small orphan boy would get bullied, and when he got bullied, he would also get raped and molested. Okay, I know someone who was the victim of that. And then another time, I knew somebody else who had witnessed it, who had seen that going on. So, essentially, you have these hotbeds of homosexuality building up from Catholicism. Now, in church history terms, the monastic orders, which force people to celibacy, they had always had complaints about sexual deviance. I was reading the history of the Valdenses, and the Valdenses were complaining of some of the monks reverting to homosexuality or bestiality, and these were like 1100 AD. I mean, this is this is not recent. Okay, so this is a long established tradition. Also, Charles Chinquois, in his book 50 Years in the Church of Rome, he was a priest, and he talked about a convention where the priests got together, and he didn't know this was going to go on. He just thought it was going to be a religious convention, but they started partying and drinking, and he got away from it, but then he started witnessing a lot of homosexuality and stuff there. And that was in the 1800s. So this is something that, has gone on and does go on. But I do think that there was a special purpose behind it. Okay, I don't think it was just the fact that, they just happened to be perverted. Okay. And I'm not saying that every single priest is one of these, but I'm saying this is what happened. And obviously it's significant, because when you have 5,000 cases of priests, and as I said, that's only the tip of the iceberg. And I mean, you look at, some of this history and some of these places where all this stuff is happening. You look at, there was a child molester in Pennsylvania, with the Penn State. Basically, those are communities that are very highly Catholic. And so this is kind of something that does go on and that does spread around. And as America has become more influenced by Catholicism, it became more influenced by homosexuality. And then when you look at the communist agenda, by the way, Karl Marx was educated at Catholic school. Okay. Um, and as I said, there's a huge Roman Catholic communist movement. All the liberal Catholics are really communist. And most Catholics are big government. Now, some have more of an Amish idea where they can be libertarian Catholics because they want a small government and a separatist society that takes over, and the separatist society would be the Roman Catholic society taking over. So they'll kind of torque it that way, but most of it, it's communism, fascism, Nazism, all these big government monstrosities. America was 98% Protestant at its founding. And this did not make the Catholic Church happy. And Britain was infiltrated by former members of the Jesuit order. The Jesuit order is a very powerful group. Okay, they were designed to basically working as secret agents to undermine the Protestant churches, and in hopes of destroying them and wiping them off the face of the planet. Because Rome was the power of Europe. Okay, the papacy and all that, it was an empire that ruled all Europe. And when the Reformation happened, it didn't just happen as far as a spirituality issue. It was a financial issue, it was a government issue, and the Roman Empire was losing its power, and they lost a couple wars, I think, to the Turks. I know that the Turks were imposing, and they lost a lot due to the lack of influence, because a lot of Anabaptists started popping up who were all pacifistic, and before you know it, there just wasn't enough military power. So, essentially, there was this hatred between the Protestants and Catholics, and mostly Rome just hated the heck out of the Protestants because they had stolen their power. So Rome's attitude towards America was obviously not going to be positive. So they would shovel immigrants over in America in hopes of overpowering them. Most of the wars were influenced by Roman Catholics. The French and Indian War, that was all Roman Catholicism. The Jesuits worked hard to get the Indians to be opposed to the Protestant English, and basically just instigated things until they had the problems that they did. The Jesuits also took over the Native Americans in Canada, and there's a lot of stuff that happened there, and they would torture Native Americans and have different ways of genocide, like smallpox, and using disease material to basically get the Native Americans sick and help them to die off without having, an obvious slaughter. But so there's all this work, and of course the Jesuits also, inside of destroying Protestantism, is taking over the world. Martin Sheen did play a Jesuit in the movie, I think it was called The Conflict. There's actually two titles of the movie, but the one I remember is The Conflict, where he played a Jesuit priest imposing the new Vatican II onto some old monks who were more old school, Latin-esque, and all that kind of stuff. Latin-esque, anyway. So, that's what's all going on there. So, there has been a movement to destroy America. And at first it was obviously with the Catholic Church, but the Catholics have shifted the focus. The Jesuits gave way to the Masonic order. The Masons were all former Jesuits. And they started establishing the secular order, which became the Novo Ordo Secularum, the New Worldly Order, the New Order Worldly. And so, with that, they switched from Roman Catholicism to socialism, communism. But essentially what they do is the same thing. So they promote a lot of that family stuff because or they want to break up the family, because if they can break up the family, then the people will come to the government for aid. So that's what they're doing. They're breaking up the family so that they can come to the government for aid and then be enslaved by the government. And so Hollywood is an engine for these things. They're an engine to promote immorality. Okay? And so when people look at these icons, okay, and these movie stars, what are they looking at? Well, they were looking at a lot of these men who are now portraying effeminate qualities. So, nowadays there are fewer and fewer tough guys in the movies. You really just don't see it. Or they might single out tough men or white men because that's the target culture. The white men started America, we need to destroy the white men so that we can have a new nation. So basically, all of a sudden you went from Schwarzenegger and Hulk Hogan, and now it's The Rock, and, a couple rappers or something, and just a lot of this, stuff to put these images out and destroy masculinity. Because once men are not the head of the household, which they've, basically got the majority now, okay, that battle's pretty well lost. There are some strongholds that were still, there's still Christian homes, good families and stuff around. But basically, once it's wiped out, then the strength of the culture is gone, okay? And, even the other ethnicities and stuff, they're starting to feel it now too, because they can't be allowed to be independent either. So all that stuff is getting wiped out, and you have this, feminism, which, one of the big problems is that, what happens to America? What happens when we run out of money? If we run out of money, okay, and of course, we have a conservative in the White House, sort of, and he's obviously trying to pump money into America. But if what Obama was doing, we get the money out of America, well, if we don't have the money, then we don't have the military, because we can't afford the weapons, or we can't upgrade the weapons. And if we can't afford the weapons, then what do we have? Well, we have an army that's infiltrated with homosexuals and women. And, you take away their bullets, it's not happening. Okay, it's just not going to work. So, this is all kind of where they want to stack the deck to destroy us. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And that's the big picture of what's going on. And so when you see this little thing happening, it's just exposing the bigger chain. And I know it's going to take people a long time to figure out that I'm right. You know what I'm saying? They'll go with one thing, and then they'll go with another, and, if they keep on following it, then this is what's going to happen out of it. So I'm going to tell you ahead of time, and you're going to think I'm crazy. But, that's where we're at. So I'll catch you later.